Bill Henshaw here again, another one of my updated current events videos. And it just gets weirder and weirder, or it seems to really. There's been no changes, but now we got Biden issuing executive orders in the area of gun control. And this is so bad that even some members of Congress on both sides of the aisle are having problems with it. The big deal here is, so just every time you see gun control, it's always followed by the Second Amendment. Has nothing to do with it, people. Absolutely zero. And for this reason, among others, the NRA is not your friend. They're another organization just like civil rights that not only doesn't want to solve the problem, they don't want to see it go away, because if that happens, their constituency goes away and they go away. Simple. You start raising much better issues, and I have them for you. We take care of the problem. Because the last time I looked, we don't enact legislation via executive order of the president acting as commander in chief of the armed forces. However, it's been that way arguably for 160 years, ever since the Lieber Code in 1860 by Abraham Lincoln. That's what has to stop. And I believe we can do it. We're the only nation that ever in existence where we can make challenges like this. It remains to be seen how successful they will be. But if we have people, especially the 90 farts, are you listening, John Roberts, out there sworn to be bound by oath by this Constitution and the laws enacted in pursuance thereof, we can get there. The big deal here is that if you're using the Second Amendment, you're making an admission and confession pursuant to the Supreme Court that you owe your what I call birthright citizenship to Section 1 of the non existent 14th War Amendment, which means, among other things, for all apparent intents and purposes, that you're a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and if necessary, your quote unquote residence can be found for all jurisdictional purposes in the District of Columbia. That must change. We're supposed to have sovereign, independent states here, none of which existed, and there's only 35 that ever did, up to and including Minnesota in 1859. That's what we're supposed to have: federated republican form of government of defined and limited powers. That's how strong our issues are. And I've been at it now in my fifth decade. I can't find anywhere in my research where there's anything remotely related to consent of the governed to all this BS that goes on in Washington, D.C. So this issue is a biggie, because if they can disarm us this way and do it by executive order, my goodness, if the Congress attempted to do that, and we won't even go into the issues right now of racial representation and quorum to do business. If they could do it, we would expect that to be summarily struck down by the 90 parts for what it is, a bill of attainder, taking life, liberty, or property without judicial process. You start asking questions like this, it gets a lot more interesting, a lot faster. And oh, by the way, we have an unlimited power to contract secured by Article 1, Section 10, and or the Ninth Article of the Amendment. Unlimited power to contract. The Supreme Court recognizes that. One of the cases is Hale v. Hinkle, 201 U.S. 43 at page 74, paragraph 3, Judge. These are the issues we have to get before them, because if we don't do that, then they're not going to rule on it. They have an Ashwander doctrine that you'll get a copy of if you get my modestly priced constitutional defense document packets that sets forth basically the Supreme Court rules for what they will hear and what they won't hear, not taking into account, they said, in an earlier era, we had a right to be there. Collins v. Virginia, the best decision ever. You'll learn about that in my constitutional defense document packets, too. Now, that's what we have to get going here. And at the moment, it looks like that only lawful de jure jus sanguinis free white state citizens can do it. I think, however, that these rights might be more expansive, especially since we have the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which guarantees the right to trial by jury according to the course of the common law to inhabitants of territories. which is very arguably, by the way, what we are these days. We're not in a state anymore. There are no states. In a federal insular territorial possession, or maybe even only pertinent to the United States. That's a really interesting thing. You can look it up. Case of Jones v. U.S. 137 U.S. 202, I believe, and see what goes on there. But that said, gun control and this era when we have a military government in Washington, D.C., that's doing everything it can to stay in power, and that includes the COVID BS pandemic, you know, it's highly questionable at this point if we do have any peaceful remedies left. We sure as hell should if the original intent of the framers of the Constitution remains in full force and effect. That's the whole point. So this gun control issue may give us a big opening here to decide it one way or the other. And I'm willing to give additional help to someone who's a serious candidate for this and will follow through and pick up, because you're going to have work to do at your end. Not nearly as much as I did, putting in 10,000 hours into this musty old stacks of law books in the library. But you will have some work to do and some court appearances to make. I may be able to do a Zoom appearance, which is today's new normal. We'll see if it ever gets away from that. Whether the courtrooms are going to remain closed, who knows? But we have remedies and we can get in there. And if we do that, then one of the big deals we'll be arguing, especially with state citizens and maybe with others, is that when we show up and assert rights secured by the Constitution, that converts the court from a federal insular territorial tribunal into a state judicial court exercising, if necessary, the concurrent judicial power of the United States. We get into a court like that one time, the ball game is over, and they know it. That's how it was set up to work. That's how it should still be working. And I believe we can make it happen. I've invested the entirety of my life in this, 15 years all in now, with that principle in mind. And it was what I was put here to do. It would have been nice to know 50 years ago in 10th grade U.S. history, but they omitted a few things here and there, and they probably did when you were in school too, so you don't have an idea. But those rights are there, and they know it. All we have to do is access them, get to a court that recognizes them, and ideally a common law jury that can rule on the facts and the law. That's the ultimate check and balance on these bastards. And it has been since the Magna Carta in 1215. So those of you interested, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. I'll send you information on my constitutional defense document packets, and we can discuss working together on this particular issue. Although the really good news for all of us is that the issues surrounding gun control apply in just about every court they have across the board, whether it's traffic court, criminal court, administrative, BS, I mean, you name it. Tax court, that's a biggie. It all relies on the same thing, federal, regional, martial law rule. And if we don't stop it now, we may never have a chance to do it. This is an unprecedented window of opportunity for us to take action. And for those of you out there with families, and regrettably, I don't have one. I made a conscious decision about that a long time ago, realizing that if I couldn't put family first, I had no business having one. For those of you that do, you can set great examples to your children and your posterity how to go in there and assert your rights and to challenge authority, which can still be done, and makes it easier for them. And they're going to learn things from you they're never going to get when they go to school either. And they'll be much better off for it down the road, knowing the information that I have. It's invaluable and so modestly priced. So that said, we can end this. And it just takes one case to do it. That's the good part about how the system works, or doesn't, depending on one's position. But, one case. And the Supreme Court knows it too. Then there are Ashwander rules. You'll learn about those. The first rule is that the court says, and I quote here, the court will not address an issue of constitutional law in the advance of the necessity of answering it. Put another way, if you don't ask, we're not going to answer, and they know damn well no members of the Supreme Court bar are going to ask questions of the type that I've been discussing here. And they also know that 99.9% of us, if not higher than that, don't have a bleeping clue about it either, because we didn't get taught in the mandatory public school system anything about it either. So I guess this is how these bastards can go to sleep at night in good conscience and say, well, if they don't know, that's not our problem. To which I reply, if we don't know, it sure as hell is your problem because of the deceit, fraud, and treason that's going on to keep us in the dark. So there we go. It's comparatively simple in the final analysis. And if we have a 6-3 conservative majority on the court, and that remains to be seen, depending how one defines conservative, we have some real chances to do things, particularly before Biden gets around to packing the court by adding justices to the court, perhaps by executive order. And here we go again with gun control. If he can do it there, I see no reason why he can't do it with the 9/0 parts either. Maybe put on, say, 15 justices. And what they're talking about now, by the way, is term limits, which I don't know if they could do for current appointees, but they could probably do it the other way around. And I've even heard talk about they wanted to limit certain justices to certain cases so they can't rule on issues. Whoa, boy, the framers would love to have heard that in 1787. Trust me, they would have put something in the Constitution to keep that from happening too. So we'll have more to say about that on an upcoming video. But for now, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. I'll get information out to you. Tell your friends, subscribe, like the videos, get the word out. If we all work together here, as I've been saying on my videos, all of us, Americans, Asians, Africans, work together and end this divide and conquer BS, we can get the job done. So that said, thank you for listening. I will see you next time.